Did you know the co-founder of Apple prints his own money? And that someone sells water that supposedly cures cancer? These are some of the craziest and downright appalling scams that people actually fell for. We all dream of a Hollywood star falling in love with one of us mere mortals. For me, it's Willem Dafoe. Oh, mama. Well, in September 2023, a 53-year-old Frenchwoman called Anne received a message on Insta from one Jane Etta Pitt. She claimed to be the mother of none other than Brad Pitt and insisted that Anne and her son would make a great match. The next day, Anne was contacted by another account with a message reading, "Hello, Anne. My mother told me a lot about you. I would like to know more." It was Brad Pitt. Anne was flabbergasted, and surely this couldn't really be the famous actor, but each day, Brad messaged her, and each day she'd message back in return. Over the course of a year, Brad wooed her with poems, songs, and photos, steadily gaining her trust. At the time, Anne was going through a nasty split with her partner, and getting attention from one of the world's most famous men was a great comfort. He even sent her luxurious designer bags, but wouldn't you know it, told her that she had to pay for customs. So Anne ended up forking out some €9,000 for them, which is over $10,000. Regardless, she believed her developing relationship with him was real and fell in love. Yet there was a curveball. Brad revealed that he'd been diagnosed with kidney cancer. Anne's heart dropped, and the news got even worse. His ex-wife, Angelina Jolie, had frozen his bank accounts so he couldn't pay for his extortionate treatment. Man, that's terrible. And to show her the pain he was going through, he sent her photos of him lying in a hospital, strapped to an IV machine, declaring, through it all, that he still loved her. Now wait, what? That's the most AI photoshopped piece of trash I've ever seen. There's no way anyone would fall for that. Well, Anne did. And to pay for his treatment, she transferred over an unbelievable €830,000. That's about $960,000. And even then, she still didn't see anything wrong with the situation. It wasn't until Anne saw a newspaper headline showing a healthy Brad Pitt and his new girlfriend, Inés de Ramón, that a feeling of unease finally slithered into her gut. What if the person she was talking to wasn't Brad Pitt? She went to the police with her story, who launched an investigation in the summer of 2024. And the results? Come on, of course it was a scam. In the aftermath, Anne had not only lost her life savings, but was also harassed and ridiculed the world over. And before you jump on the bullying bandwagon, remember, sure this sounds silly, but she was in a vulnerable position with the divorce of her husband, and the scam unfolded over nearly a year. It wasn't some immediate request for money. Plus, Anne admitted that she wasn't tech-savvy and rarely used social media, so she clearly was more prone to being manipulated. The trauma from the whole affair led her into a deep depression, and nobody should have to go through that. And sadly, Anne's story is far from the only recent romance scam to take advantage of AI. In July 2025, Southampton, UK, 43-year-old Paul Davis was down on his luck, unemployed and struggling with depression. For months, he'd been bombarded by scammers telling him he'd won prizes or sending him AI images pretending to be celebrities like Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, or Ellie Goulding. What a trio. But Davis didn't fall for any of these. Oh no. Until, that is, he was contacted on Facebook by Jennifer Aniston.
Hi, you.
I like her. She seems smart.
And thought for some ungodly reason that this time it was the real deal. To convince him she was the genuine article, the fake Jennifer sent him a photo of her driver's license, really a doctored image, and later confessed her love in the only real way anyone can, by holding up a piece of paper with the words written on it.
So cute.
Against all odds, the man fell for it hook, line, and sinker. So when fake Jennifer asked him to send over hundreds of dollars worth of gift cards, he complied, ultimately giving away over $270. Nish. Safe to say, Paul felt humiliated, though at least he didn't lose anything like as much as Anne. But that's just the start. From here on, each scam gets even crazier than the last, so make sure to stay till the end. Well, hello there, cutie. Oh, sorry, wasn't talking to you. I was talking to him. He's soft, cuddly, and irresistible. He's my perfect real-life copy. And for the entire month of May, you can grab our iconic Bartholomew plushie for half price. You heard it right. That's 50% off. Everybody loves him with loads of 5-star reviews backing up the quality. Whether he's sitting on your desk or chilling on your bed, he's a perfect companion. And remember, every plushie is designed by us, and every purchase helps support the channel and keeps the videos coming. This offer only lasts a month though, so if you ever thought about getting one, now's the time. Scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the description to grab your Bartholomew while this insane deal lasts. So, some of you may have heard of Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak. Here he is with his buddy Steve Jobs back in the day. Now, fast forward to 2011, and a strange interview aired where Woz admitted something fishy about his finances.
I sell sheets of $4 $2 bills for $5. And of course, I tell you, what you're getting is worth $50. It's worth. You'd be an idiot not to buy it for $5. I sell them all over the place.
But that is illegal, right? Well, there's a bit more to it than that. See, Woz was being very tricksy with his words. The pads are real, but he doesn't actually print his own money. In the sad world of reality, he legally purchases uncut sheets of real $2 bills from the Bureau of Engraving and Printing and hands them over to a print shop to bind into pads with perforations between the bills, so he can tear them away. The reason? It's a prank. Woz just likes to watch people's confused reactions as he whips out his highly suspicious but totally legal pad of notes. You too can buy dollar pads directly from the Bureau's website and have your own cheeky mischief. But each $2 bill costs more like $3 when purchased in sheets, so it's not exactly cost-effective. And you've got to be careful. Woz told a story about how he was ripping $2 from pads in a Las Vegas casino and aroused the suspicion of a security guard. Soon enough, an agent from the Secret Service took him aside and asked for ID. Woz, ever the jokester, handed over a fake ID that said he was a laser safety officer from the Department of Defiance rather than Defense. It even had a photo of him wearing an eye patch. Wow, that's a dumb thing to do. But after glancing at the ID, the agent accepted it. And wow, that's an even dumber thing to do. After a 40-minute grilling, it was determined that Woz's notes were legal, and he was released a free man with his $2 pad in check. One man who really did print out his own money was Victor Lustig, one of the most prolific con men in history. Originally from Austria-Hungary, he traveled all over the world emptying people's pockets. But perhaps his craziest scam of all was Lustig's Romanian box. Let me explain. In 1926, Lustig would board ocean liners, surround himself with wealthy businessmen, and dress in expensive suits proclaiming himself to be a count. When inevitably asked about the source of his wealth, Lustig would reveal, in the strictest confidence of course, that he owned a special contraption, a mahogany box with handles and levers sticking out of it. Its secret? It could print money. He demonstrated by inserting an authentic $100 bill into the box, then waiting a few hours for, as he put it, chemical processing. After this, he'd turn a crank on its side, and boom, out would come two $100 bills. After enough successful tests, all doubts were allayed. Convinced, the multitude of businessmen he'd now shown it to would beg for the box, but Lustig would dismiss all of their offers, claiming it was far too valuable. At this, the offers would skyrocket, with bids usually reaching as high as $10,000, which is over $180,000 today, or even more. Eventually, Lustig would relent, agreeing to sell the box to the highest bidder, and at the end of the voyage, the Count would hand it over and disappear. Little did the buyer know that before every demonstration, Lustig would conceal several real $100 bills in the box so he could pretend to print them right back out later. Then, when Lustig was long gone and the greedy saps tried it for themselves, nothing came out, and nothing ever would. Though, over in England now, the home of soccer, or should I say, football! Back in 1996, Graham Souness, manager of the struggling Southampton Football Club, got a call from George Weah, a legendary Liberian striker who'd won FIFA World Player of the Year and went on to become president of his country. Anyway, we waxed lyrical about his cousin, Ali Dia, a footballer from Senegal who played for his country internationally, scoring goal after goal. Impressed and trusting Weah's judgment, Souness immediately signed Dia up with a 1-month contract with Southampton. The man debuted on November 23rd against Leeds United, brought on to substitute for an injured player, and his performance was, after 53 miserable minutes, he was pulled off and Southampton lost 2-0. Folks said Diaz's playing was like watching Bambi on ice and called him possibly the worst player to have ever played in the Premier League. Souness had this to say.
You subbed him with your new Senegalese striker. Was that a ray of optimism?
He didn't do well today. He didn't get a kick of the ball, but he wasn't alone in not doing well today.
But the other Southampton players knew something wasn't right. Something further affirmed when the following Monday, Dia left the club, never to be seen by Southampton again. It wasn't until December, though, that the truth was revealed. Weah's phone call to Souness had been a hoax. The Liberian striker came out saying Dia was not his cousin, nor had he ever met him. Turns out that a fake Weah had called a load of football clubs' managers all over England, praising Dia, but none of them had fallen for it, apart from Souness. Man, how embarrassing. Before Southampton, the only team Dia had played for was Blythe Spartans, a little bottom-of-the-league club. With the country turning on him, Dia claimed it was his agent who duped Souness, while he was innocent. Yeah, sure. Whether a con man or not, after Southampton, Dia was signed on with Gateshead and even scored a goal. Hooray! Today, Dia's whereabouts are unknown, but I hope he knows we miss him. But Victor Lustig was responsible for more than one unbelievable scam. In 1925, the Eiffel Tower was brand new, but many Parisians considered it to be a costly eyesore. So Lustig sent out letters to all the local scrap metal dealers claiming to be a French public official. He claimed that the government was tearing the tower down and auctioning it to the highest bidder for scrap. Then, from a fancy hotel room, he held meeting after meeting with rich businessmen. One victim was André Poisson, who had enough sense to ask some questions about the project. Lustig had an answer for that. He was an underpaid public official, and finding a buyer for such an impressive tower was quite the big decision. Poisson decided that he must be the real deal if he was hinting for a bribe, like only a bureaucrat can do. So he forked over the equivalent of $4.9 million for the tower, as well as an additional $230,000 for the con man's bribe. Lustig took the money and ran back to Austria, expecting to see his face on wanted posters. But Poisson was so embarrassed to have been taken in by the scam, he didn't report it. Now, you'd think that Lustig would never show his face again in Paris, but oh no. After just 1 month, he returns to pull off the trick again. Unfortunately for him, the second sap he scammed wasn't as ashamed as Poisson about calling the police. This time, the story broke, yet still, Lustig escaped justice, skedaddling to Chicago, where he even managed to rip off Al Capone, who didn't even realize he'd been had. But every dog has its day. After his girlfriend suspected him of cheating, she reported him to the police, and in 1935, the great con man was finally arrested and sent to the infamous Alcatraz prison, where he died 12 years later. We've all heard of the Ponzi scheme, where a con artist convinces investors that they're putting their money somewhere safe and secure, which they are, namely the con artist's pocket. This was originated by Charles Ponzi, who started out buying coupons in Italy that could be redeemed for stamps in America, with an exchange rate that let him make about a 400% profit. But he wasn't satisfied with that sweet deal and went on to start his first Ponzi scheme. He founded the Securities Exchange Company and took investors' money to do exactly what he was doing, buying and exchanging coupons for stamps. Except he didn't do any of that. He just invested the money in himself. He did pay out a few early investors to make it look like the scam was working. And that's how the Ponzi scheme reeled in more investors who'd heard from early investors that they'd already got a return. But only a few early investors actually got a payout. Larger numbers of investors never saw a dime. with the vast majority of money going straight to Mr. Ponzi. Over 8 months, Ponzi made around $15 million, and ignoramuses hailed him as a financial wizard. Things fell apart when postal inspectors became suspicious of how he was able to ensure the returns he promised. And despite their doubts, they couldn't arrest him for fraud because no one was complaining of being cheated. But with his validity in question, a defensive Ponzi boldly asked authorities to audit his books. In doing so, the idiot caused his own downfall. The scheme was found out, and the next day, angry investors flooded his office to demand their money. Unable to pay them back, Ponzi was charged with mail fraud. He attempted to flee numerous times to different parts of the country, but was eventually caught and deported back to Italy. Good riddance. During the 1880s, millions of hopeful immigrants arriving in New York fell victim to one insidious conman, George C. Parker. Using all his charms, he would scout out naive marks who were new to the city and produced false documents that convinced his victims he was the rightful owner of buildings, including the Brooklyn Bridge. Parker then escorted them to the monument where he'd planted a "Bridge for Sale" sign. He regaled them of its value, saying that they could make a fortune charging access, and convinced some to part with as much as $50,000, some $1.7 million today. Several times, the cops had to stop Parker's buyers from erecting a toll booth, explaining to them that they'd been had, and their dreams of making it big fell flat. Some say Parker sold the Brooklyn Bridge twice a week for 40 years. Heck, he was so good that he used his tactic to sell the Met, Madison Square Garden, and even the Statue of Liberty. Processors at Ellis Island had to start handing out pamphlets that essentially said public buildings, streets, and monuments were not for sale. It may come as no surprise that Parker got into trouble with the law a few times. The end, however, came for him after he forged a $150 check that bounced with startling elasticity. Under the city's laws, a fourth-time felon was immediately sentenced to life in prison, where Parker spent the rest of his days. In 2020, in the midst of the COVID pandemic, the world became enamored with one 99-year-old British World War II veteran, Captain Tom Moore. In the UK, the National Healthcare Service was buckling under the massive influx of patients sick with the disease. In a bid to raise £1,000 for the NHS, Tom committed to walking 100 laps around his garden. Little did everyone know, this heartfelt pledge wasn't quite as wholesome as it seemed. Regardless, Captain Tom captured the hearts of a nation, ultimately raising a colossal £38 million, over $51 million, and within a month, his fame soared. He published 3 books, had a #1 single,
Silver song of the Lord,
which is awful, and to top it all off, was even knighted by the Queen. And sadly, in February 2021, Captain Tom passed away after contracting COVID. Britain was in mourning, and Prime Minister Bojo declared him a national hero. But now, things get real interesting. See, after his death, the Captain Tom Foundation was set up by his daughter, Hannah Ingram Moore, to support, and I quote, causes close to Captain Sir Tom's heart. But something wasn't right. The Ingram Moores were getting and spending money left, right, and center. Hannah received £18,000 to appear as a judge at an awards ceremony, even though she was already on an £85,000 salary she'd given herself as the director of the foundation. Her plan? Not to give to charity. Oh, no. To build a £200,000 spa building by her house, which later had to be demolished due to planning permission issues. And in 2022, the UK's Charity Commission reviewed the accounts of the foundation and found that although it had paid out several grants to charities in its first year, it had also spent hundreds of thousands on nondescript management and support costs. If you think that sounds suspicious, you're right. Something made even more apparent when another payment was found from the foundation directly to a private company that Hannah owns. Had she been squirreling away people's hard-earned donations for her own personal gain? Remember those 3 books I said Tom published? Well, despite Tom writing in one of them that profits would go to the foundation, it was revealed that Hannah had kept every penny made from their sales to the tune of 800,000 pounds or over $1 million. And what's more, she said her father had told her to do so. Sympathetic buyers were being utterly duped. To be fair, it's up for debate how much Captain Tom himself had in this scam, as he unfortunately can't defend himself. But either way, Hannah and her husband were disqualified as charity trustees, the foundation's name was changed, and it stopped accepting donations. So you can just forget about any real justice, though. The family hasn't technically done anything illegal, just immoral. If true, the whole nation was scammed by a 100-year-old con man and his daughter. If you're aware of the manosphere, you've probably heard of misogynist and Andrew Tate. But even before all the horrific accusations, he and his brother Tristan were already deep in the scamming game. They started their own business, employing around 75 webcam models who charged callers $4 a minute for a conversation. This wasn't just any hotline, though. These women were specifically instructed to convince their clients that they were in real relationships with them, tricking gullible, horny men into giving up their cash. Some women came up with sob stories claiming they were in university debt, had a sick old relative in need of private health care, or that they just dreamed of moving abroad. Others simply told the men they were desperate to meet them in person, but needed cash for the journey. Those who believed them ended up running up huge debts, with one man even giving away his $26,000 inheritance. Jeez. Not that it bothers the brothers. Andrew brazenly admitted that his business was all a big scam and had no remorse for the conned men, saying it's their problem, not mine.
Here's where the famoose would start. So it'd be good, like I had a lot of girls who worked for me, and the best was like the Ukrainians or the Russians. It was amazing. Because they'd get some guy, fall in love, they'd arrange the day to meet, all this shit, I need a visa. Okay, get a visa. I need money for a visa. Okay, how much is the visa? It's $900. No, but it's not $900 because I went to the embassy. They think I'm a risk, and I need a return flight there and back, and I need a hotel. I need to have spending money in my bank account. They won't let me come. Or how much do you need? All right, 10 grand. Boom, it's 10 G's. Boom, thanks. Wow. Go to the embassy, take a picture outside the embassy, boom, come back. They rejected my visa. They said we have to wait 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, they'll give it to me. Okay, baby, boom. 2 more weeks of tips. Boom, 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 boom. Because now he thinks he's going to right? He thinks we get the girls. Now he's spending more than ever. 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. 2 weeks come. Some other problem. Whether it's visa, whatever. We make up some bullshit, right? People would say, why did those girls work for you? Because the girls would work for me, and at 50%, because it was 50-50, would make millions per month. If they worked for themselves, they'd make nothing. I was the best in the game.
Boasting smugly, the Tate brothers said that they hadn't done anything illegal because of certain lines hidden in the terms and conditions. And the lines in question state that the service is for entertainment purposes only, and that all cash given to a model is a voluntary sign of gratitude for their time broadcasting, so not directly in exchange for anything. If that wasn't bad enough, the Tates have been accused of abusing the models that they employed, with some women apparently being forced to have words "owned by Tate" tattooed on their bodies. These guys are goblins. Even so, the brothers believed the law couldn't touch them, and that was until the law touched them. The Tates now live in Romania, where they're awaiting trials both there and in the UK. Let's just hope they face some real consequences. Back in 1980, a recently divorced and broke car salesman, Dennis Hope, needed a quick way to make cash, and lots of it. Looking out the window, he spotted the moon floating like a penny in the sky, and suddenly he had a loony idea. Hope scoured through the 1967 United Nations Outer Space Treaty, which states, outer space, including the moon and other celestial bodies, is not subject to national appropriation by claim of sovereignty. In other words, no country can own the moon. But Hope's not a country. He's an individual. And the treaty doesn't say nothing about individuals owning the moon. It was then that Hope decided he owned the moon, and he was going to sell it. Wanting to do his due diligence, he wrote a letter to the UN, the US, and the Russian governments, making his declaration clear. Unsurprisingly, he never heard back. Regardless, he founded his own company, Lunar Embassy, and started selling plots of land off for $20 an acre, a price that's since gone up to $35. Suckers. Customers then received certificates for their lunar deeds for land that they'll never visit.
These are like CC&Rs,
I don't know what you're talking about
rules
now.
by which property owners have to conduct themselves.
I see. And you get a lunar deed, which...
A physical description of the property.
And then you get a lunar map that shows you where your piece is.
Right.
Hope claims that celebrities like Tom Cruise, George Lucas, and George W. Bush have all bought land. Even sells property on all of the other planets.
Well, actually, we sell land on the moon, Mars, Venus, and one of the moons of Jupiter, Io. And next month, we'll do Ganymede, Callisto, and Mercury.
With the lunar estate business booming in 2004, he created his own state, the Galactic Government, which has a constitution, a congress, a unit of currency, and a patent office.
We need to know that your company takes us seriously.
The Moon Man dreams of one day building a pyramid on the moon for intergalactic vacations, though doubts people will live there because it'll be bad for their health. Yes, suffocating and exploding to death in the vacuum of space does sound a bit uncomfortable. But despite such lofty ambitions, Hope says that he's been taken to court for fraud in Germany and Sweden and received abuse, death threats, and many allegations of being a con man. And yeah, I'm going to call him one too. Quite simply, you can't own the moon just because you say so. The UN treaty also states the activities of non-governmental entities in outer space, including the moon and other celestial bodies, shall require authorization and continuing supervision by the appropriate state party to the treaty. Hope's from the US, but never got permission from the American government to own or sell the moon, which they can't give because no country can. So the whole thing's a moot point. All of those people buying lunar deeds are just buying expensive pieces of paper. Not that this has stopped him. As of 2024, the Moon Man's allegedly made $12 million from his scam. Well, in that case, I'm saying I own the whole universe. Attention, all beings. You owe me rent. For people in the city of Nanjing, China, the Menshin Cooperative looked like any other bank. For more than a year, over 400 customers came and went, depositing their hard-earned cash with clerks behind the counters. Only this wasn't an ordinary bank at all. In 2014, one businessman deposited 12 million yuan, that's $1.9 million, and he was never paid back the interest promised. So, understandably, he went to the bank and asked for his savings back, and they refused. Bewildered, the businessman went straight to the police, and in 2015, officers launched an investigation into the establishment and made a shocking discovery. The business had gone through none of the procedures required for a bank. Uh-oh. It turns out this place was completely fake, and duped customers had been conned out of 435 million yuan. That's a whopping $51 million. Police apprehended 5 people over the scam, including a woman who'd reportedly fled to Macau, China's gambling capital, with the customers' money. The whole thing had been so convincing because one crook had previously worked at a state-owned bank and trained employees to work as if they were the real deal, with one exception. Clerks were told to give vague answers to any questions or worries. Yep, when it came to customers' concerns, this bank had no interest. Now for something completely different.
You gotta give him that hawk too and spit on that thing, you get me?
And so, Hawk to a Girl was born. In the wake of this clip, the 20-something-year-old, real name Haley Welch, gained an immense social media following, which she used to quit her job, begin selling Hawk Tuah merchandise, and start her own podcast, Talk Tuah, in September of 2024. Yep, society is screwed. And with all this newfound fame, it only made sense for her to release her own Bitcoin. So in 2024, she released the Dollar Hawk token, or Spitcoin as some grossly dubbed it. The digital coin hit a huge $490 million market cap shortly after its launch, only to plummet by over 95% within hours, costing some fans who bought the cryptocurrency their entire life savings. This sparked some damning accusations, the most relentless of which came from YouTuber CoffeeZilla, who confronted her directly.
Hey, this is one of the most miserable, horrible launches I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, then why the
are you on?
CoffeeZilla and plenty of others thought Welch was behind a pump and dump scheme, where she and others responsible for the coin deliberately hyped up its price before launch, then quickly sold it off for a profit at the expense of the legitimate investors. As you can imagine, Welch denied all accusations, saying in a now deleted X post that the team hasn't sold one token. But CoffeeZilla says this is all a big fat lie. Now, the explanation behind tokenomics is complicated, but I'm going to explain it as best I can. Basically, Welch and her team allegedly had sold a huge amount of tokens before the public launch to select a group of insiders, wealthy investors or people connected to the team who got their hands on the tokens for cheap. So when the coin did launch, all the hype around it shot the price up, only for the insiders to quickly sell theirs off at an inflated price just as it went public, which crashed the price right back down. The most egregious thing about the whole scam is that it was targeted at Hawk Tuah fans who had little to no understanding of cryptocurrency. Fans thought they were joining a fun money-making community, only to have the rug ripped out from under them. Welch, in her last proper episode of Talk Tuah, aired in May 2025, had this to say.
The guy that was running it, he thought it would be a good idea to get me out and get me to see everything in the community, meet people from the community, and just kind of get a feel of it. But I don't know, I didn't feel like I felt anything when I left. I just still didn't understand it.
So, even though you didn't understand it, you still felt it was okay to aggressively promote it to your thousands of loyal fans? Yeah, okay. Welch also claimed that she never made a dime from the coins herself. However, an investigation was launched by a federal agency which found Welch was not to blame. Huh.
That's suspicious.
So what? She's really an innocent bystander? I'll let you be the judge. Either way, Welch gave up the podcast and has mostly withdrawn from the internet aside from occasional live streams, which barely break a few thousand views. That's the last time I'm trusting someone who got famous for spitting on that thing. In 2011, 19-year-old India Oxenberg was fresh out of college and, like all graduates, had no purpose until she heard about the organization NXIVM, a self-empowerment group based in New York that promised personal transformation and signed up for their Executive Success Program. Little did she know that NXIVM was a total scam. And much, much worse than that, India was one of 16,000 people who joined the program. But little did she know she'd stay in it for 7 years. During her time there, she met the organization's leader, Keith Rainier, who with his long hair and calm, thoughtful demeanor, looked like a hippie. But really, he was a monster. He founded NXIVM in 1998, beginning the Executive Success Program as a form of self-help. But this wasn't a self-help class the likes I've ever heard of. First, students had to sign a non-disclosure agreement and vow never to speak of what they were going to see. Then they paid up to $10,000 for 5 days of lectures and intense emotional probing in daily 13-hour sessions. Students like India met with Rainier and confided their hopes and dreams to him, going into intimate detail about all their relationships, something that he'd later use to keep them in line. They were all taught to prioritize their own self-interests above all others and avoid parasites, that is, people who would need help. Wait, wasn't needing help the very reason they signed up in the first place? Well, of course, but really, the whole spiel was just a way to make Rainier's students loyal to him and nobody else. And it gets worse. Rainier, as a leader, was referred to as Vanguard by everyone else in the organization, and as students climbed the social ladder, they were required to become more, intimate with him. Eventually, this escalated into performing awful, degrading acts for this predator. India was one of the victims. In her time there, she was isolated from her family, and any attempt to leave was met with the threat of blackmail, i.e. the reveal of family secrets or compromising photos Rainier had obtained. Students were starved, sleep-deprived, and gradually brainwashed into accepting Rainier's abhorrent behavior, all while paying for their continued treatment. Rainier got to some of his students so much they were promoted to first-line masters subordinate to him, but in control of many other girls in the organization, although slaves is a more accurate word. In total, India, who's the granddaughter of Princess Elizabeth of Yugoslavia, paid $100,000 to NXIVM. In one of the most atrocious acts described, she and another woman were made to strip, held down, and had a symbol scarred onto their hips. Look closely, and the symbol resembles a K and an R, Rainier's initials. This is much more than a scam. It was a full-blown cult. The whole time, India's mother had been campaigning tirelessly to rescue her daughter, but to no avail. It was only after an investigation by the New York Times in 2017 that Rainier was found out and India could finally escape his clutches. After being deprogrammed, she began to realize the horror that was committed and told her side of the story.
People say, well, how did this happen? Like, that's so ridiculous. Did she just say yes right away? Absolutely not. That's not how it happens. It's a slow drip of indoctrination and grooming that allows for these types of things to happen.
As for Rainier, that conniving monster was arrested and sentenced to 120 years in prison. The students he scammed and abused, though, they have to live with that trauma for the rest of their lives. AI is everywhere these days, but back in 2018, the phenomenon was largely still science fiction, unless you were North Carolina man Michael Smith. He thought he could make a quick buck selling music, and all he needed to do was click a few buttons. The songs he created weren't performed by any artists. They were composed by AI in what Smith called instant music. Adding up the numbers, Smith realized that if he streamed fake songs 661,440 times each day, he could bring in daily royalty payments of over $3,000. That's as much as $1.2 million a year. There were dollar signs in his eyes. Teaming up with an unnamed co-conspirator who supplied him with hundreds of thousands of fake tracks, Smith uploaded music by non-existent bands with names like Carolee Screams to streaming platforms. Nice. These songs were listened to by audiences billions of times, except the audiences were also fake. Smith created 10,000 fake streaming accounts using email addresses he'd either made himself or bought online, and used bot software so they'd repeatedly listen to his AI music. Soon his instant music was top of the charts, and as views grew, his wallet swelled. As of 2024, he'd made an insane $10 million in total, money that could have gone to real artists playing real music. That was until his scheme was found out. See, some streaming services had been suspicious of Smith's streaming data for years and limited his royalties. But when the FBI caught wind in 2024, it was game over. He was arrested and charged with wire fraud and money laundering. It's time for Smith to face the music. In 2015, Israeli police were investigating one seriously crazy scam that swindled a businessman out of €8 million. It's over $9.3 million. The businessman swore he'd had a video call with France's defense minister, Jean-Yves Le Drian, who'd requested money for what he described as a secret operations by the French state. Long story short, the man had sent it and the so-called defense minister had dipped. But he wasn't the only one. Other business people, embassies, and consulates also had been approached by the defense minister with the same request. Now, what was going on? Was Le Drian really conning people? Sacre bleu! Of course not. It turns out con men had constructed an exact replica of Le Drian's office to stage the calls in. Okay, but how did they convince anyone that the man calling them was actually him? Well, simple. They had a silicone mask made of Le Drian, and the fraudster holding the call would wear it. Now, that is cursed. But have no fear about receiving a call from this grotesquerie. In 2016, the scammers' reign of terror came to an end after they contacted a businesswoman asking for €2 million. This time the meeting was in person, but the police found out and accompanied her there, where they captured 3 men involved in the scam. Despite the 3 men denying their involvement, it wasn't much longer until the real masterminds were revealed. In 2017, Gilbert Chikli, the man behind the mask, and his partner, Anthony Lazarevich, were tracked down and caught in Ukraine. In total, only 3 victims fell for the scam, but together they were robbed of an astonishing 55 million euro, over $64.5 million. And that's not all. On the conmen's phones, police found photos of silicone mask of Prince Albert II of Monaco. Yeah, it looks like these boys had been busy cooking up another scheme before their downfall. Religion! It's everywhere, and there are plenty of swindlers trying to take advantage of it. In 80s America, Peter Popoff was one of the most infamous. Dressed in a snappy suit and armed with his extravagant persona and jet black hair, Popoff was a televangelist and faith healer who attracted huge crowds seeking to be healed through the power of God.
You've got cancer of the stomach? Are you ready for God to burn that cancer out? Here it goes in the mighty. Devil, back off. Back off, devil! Woo. Hallelujah!
He racked up $4 million a year, screaming at the top of his lungs. To the followers in his ministry, Popoff was a miracle worker. He claimed God told him their names, their illnesses, their whole life stories, and could wash away all their problems with his divine powers. And they believed him. But all this razzle-dazzle caught the eye of a team of skeptics, led by infamous debunker James Randi. In 1986, a team found that the source of Popoff's powers came from a very worldly place.
Hello, Petey. Can you hear me? If you can't, you're in trouble.
It wasn't God prompting him, it was his wife Liz, and she did it through a wireless earpiece. See, when guests attended his services, they were asked to fill out prayer cards with their personal details. Using a radio scanner, Randi found that, behind the scenes, Liz was feeding information to Pete, who called out the audience's names as if possessed. Popoff was exposed and a year later filed for bankruptcy. But Popoff had one more miracle, resurrecting his own career. Since the late 90s, Popoff set about quietly rebranding his ministry as the People United for Christ, this time targeting African American Christians with prosperity gospel, the belief that wealth can be attained through prayer and payment, but mostly payment to him. Indeed, his TV promos still run sometimes in the depths of obscure channels, and if you sign up for the ministry's mailing list, you'll receive everything from 5 cents from the man himself to cheap, worthless knickknacks peddled as divine artifacts like miracle spring water, which can supposedly do anything from clearing debt to curing cancer.
Do you need a miracle? Real people with real needs are receiving real life-changing miracles when they use the miracle spring water.
My husband brought the spring water up and I drank it. And I'm speaking today. I had no speech, totally paralyzed.
And all of this tacky garbage comes with encouragements to send money to Popoff. And once again, people have been lured in by this charlatan. In 2006, his ministry revenues reached $35 million, and in 2009, Popoff's income was recorded at $100,000 a month, while he now lives in a mansion worth over $8 million. Jesus. However, his flagrant lies have got him into some hot water. In April 2015, the UK Christian TV channel The Word Network was fined over $200,000 for broadcasting 2 of Popoff's episodes, where he spun his ludicrous claims about miracle water.
This faith tool will help you to see liberation from the bondage of death. It's free. I want to send it to you. No obligation.
If you ask me, it should have been Popoff who was fined. Abusing people's faith is downright evil. So for the love of God, don't believe this scammer. Now, people always obey authority. A chilling example of someone exploiting that tendency happened in April 2004 at a McDonald's in Mount Washington, Kentucky. Assistant manager Donna Jean Summers was in charge of the restaurant that day when she got a call from a policeman, Officer Scott. He told her that a woman working on the premises had been accused of stealing a purse and that the only one who matched the description was 18-year-old Louise Ogborn. To reassure her, the officer told Summers that he had her manager on the other line, as well as a corporate head. With no reason to distrust the cops, Summers followed his instructions and took Ogborn into her office. There, Officer Scott ordered Summers to remove an item of clothing one by one until Ogborn was completely naked. And despite the girl's tears, Summers did as she was told and then handed her an apron to cover herself. But that wasn't the end. Officer Scott then requested that Summers hire someone to guard Ogborn. Summers, without a single red flag raised in her mind, called her fiancé, Walter Nix, asking him to come by and watch her. On arriving, she handed Nix the phone and left him alone with the young woman. And then things went from bad to worse. Obediently, Nix did everything Officer Scott asked, and for the next 2 hours, subjected her to some awful abuse, of which I can't go into. Ogborn pled with him to take her to a police station so she could prove her innocence, but when she refused to follow demands, Nix was told to strike her. Eventually, Officer Scott ordered Nix to leave, and after arriving home, the first thing he did was phone his friend and say, "I've done something terribly bad." Following this, the role of guard went to the maintenance man, but thankfully, he was aghast at what he was being told to do, refused to comply, and told Summers that something clearly wasn't right. Alarm bells finally started ringing, and she phoned her manager, the same one Officer Scott had told her he had on the other line, only for the manager to tell her that she'd been at home asleep the whole time. The realization curdled her blood. The officer was a fraud, and there was no crime. They'd been duped, but he'd already hung up. And this was far from the first case. The first instance of such a call came in 1995, and by 2003, over 60 similar scam calls had been reported across the U.S. So when this one came in 2004, employees of at least 68 restaurants had been conned. And most shockingly, all of these cases were linked to one perpetrator. So who was Officer Scott? Well, police traced the call to Panama City, Florida, and figured out that it was made by someone who'd bought a calling card, essentially a prepaid card with a certain amount of calling credit on it. With this, they traced the store the card was purchased on and found the buyer. It was David R. Stewart, a prison guard. But if you were expecting justice, brace yourself. At his trial, things fell apart for the prosecution. There were no witnesses to Stewart specifically committing the crime, and the phone call hadn't been recorded, so he was acquitted due to lack of evidence. Police did claim that the scam calls stopped after Stewart's arrest, which is something, I guess, but the scammer behind the shocking crime went unpunished. As for Summers, she ended her engagement with Nix, who pleaded guilty to some very serious crimes and was sentenced to 5 years in jail. Summers herself was fired from McDonald's, pleading guilty to unlawful imprisonment, and was placed on probation. And the victim in all this? In the aftermath, Ogborn told how she suffered from panic attacks, insomnia, and nightmares. So much so that 3 years after the call, she sued McDonald's, arguing that the company had been aware of the hoax calls, yet had failed to tell anyone in their employ. The case ended in 2007, and Ogborn was awarded $6.1 million. But that's slim consolation for the trauma she endured at the hands of a scammer. Oh man, I don't know who to trust now. What did you think the craziest scam was? Be sure to let me know down below. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.